And welcome into this week's edition of the Recruiting Roundup, powered by Rock and Refuel. As always, Scout.com's Jason Jewell, and I'm Jared Cohen. We bring the latest in Arizona high school football recruiting year-round. We'll preview the semifinals, two of the matchups that we have our eyes on, even though every single matchup is going to be great, plus the latest in recruiting, Jason, which is what we do first and foremost each and every time. We're going to bring a different spin. There weren't any high school football recruiting news, but at the JUCO level, former high school prepsters out here in Arizona picked up some big offers.
Yeah, the junior college system here in Arizona is very, very good. So it's a good alternative for players that don't reach their goals and aspirations of being Division I guys out of high school. It's a good way for them to show what they can do against college-level talent and then get re-recruited, especially on the offensive line. Those kids get heavily recruited. I'm going to focus on two offensive linemen right now. First, plays for me at Glendale Community College, Preston Brooksby, played at Sunrise Mountain out in Peoria. Kind of an odd story. Went on his Mormon mission and now has returned. He has 5 Division I scholarship offers, though, now. He's grown. He was 6'4", 240 pounds when he first showed up as a freshman. Now he's 6'5", 290. He has multiple offers: Georgia State, Old Dominion, Weber State, North Texas, and UT San Antonio. So he's blown up. Then the other guy I want to talk about is Will Kreitler, a center at Scottsdale Community College, an all-conference type guy, played at Gilbert High School. He has tripped to New Mexico State, and the Aggies have offered him, and he's tripping to Southern Miss next weekend. So, again, I want to say that the junior college system in Arizona is a good way for these players to go and get re-recruited.
Now, Jason, let's get into the news from last week in round 2 of the playoffs, starting with our player of the week. And Weston Barlow has been one of the most electrifying players the last 2 seasons in Division III for the Queen Creek Bulldogs. But the last 3 weeks, he has just been a monster, especially in last week's win over Desert Edge.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a player that's played better than Barlow over the last month or so. You know, last week against Desert Edge, I was very surprised that Queen Creek just took it to the Scorpions. Barlow was the man. He rushed for 298 yards and had 6 touchdowns on the ground, which is just absolutely ridiculous against a team like Desert Edge that had been on a roll.
Now, speaking of Queen Creek, we'll mix in the fact that they play Saguaro next week in a big matchup, and I'm going to look ahead to that one in round 2, Jason. Weston Barlow has been a monster, 1,200 yards rushing over the last 3 weeks, has been an absolute beast. The last time he faced Saguaro, though, was back on week 6 of this season, had just 40-plus yards rushing on 2.7 yards per carry. So Saguaro was able to limit him on 15 carries. That's going to be a key note in this game. When you look back at when these two teams met in the state championship game a year ago, Christian Kirk went off and Queen Creek really struggled to limit big explosive plays. That will be a big key for Queen Creek to defend Saguaro, and they'll need Barlow to really make it happen offensively. Now, Jason, let's talk about our breakout prospects from last week. First one on your end. You saw quite the stud out there on the defensive line from Liberty.
Yeah, I've been covering football for a long time, like 12 years now in the Valley, and I don't know that I've seen a dominant performance as big as that Aaron Blackwell had against Paradise Valley. Liberty defensive tackle Aaron Blackwell was just a monster. He's 6'3", and he's 280 pounds. He's a good student. I'm just shocked that he's not getting more heavily recruited. Doesn't really have much going on right now, but he is a guy. He was in the backfield all night long. He blocked a punt. He had a PBU, tackle for a loss. He was just disruptive. He really limited what Paradise Valley was able to do offensively.
My breakout prospect from last week was from the Chaparral Sunnyside game. Chaparral, of course, they have their tough season, but there they are once again in the semifinals. And the player that stood out to me was sophomore wide receiver Gianni Tomasi. Now, this is a player that has really come out of nowhere this season and making big plays, as we saw 3 big touchdowns last week against Sunnyside, including one that went for 67 yards. But with sophomore quarterback Grayson Berry taking over for the Firebirds, they need guys like Tomasi to step up and make plays. And that's what he's done. And because of it, Chaparral, despite kind of stumbling into the playoffs and people being down on them, are 1 game away from the state championship. One more game I want to get into, Jason, before we call things for the recruiting roundup this week. The big matchup in Division I, Mountain Point against Chandler, the rematch from earlier in the year, which saw Mountain Point get out to the fast start, which was more than enough to catapult them to the win. Should be another dandy in Division I.
I was at that first game, and I am going to go to this game on Friday, and I'm really looking forward to it. I don't think there'll be another game with as many college-level prospects on the field as this game. It's going to be huge. Two different styles of football, though. Mountain Point, we saw what they did last week against Pinnacle. They love to run the football. Brandon Leonard had 200 yards rushing. They're just, and what they do up front is just ridiculous, led by Nick Carmen and Davis Parrott. You know, what can they do versus that Chandler spread offense? Bryce Perkins, who is just playing lights out. He's completing 75% of his passes on the year, which is just ridiculous. Justin Jan has emerged as a college-level prospect. I'm very excited to be at this game.
Should be a really, really fun game to watch. That's it for this week's edition of the Recruiting Roundup. We'll preview the state championships next week, so you won't want to miss that one. Until then, Jason Jewell, Jared Cohen, this has been the Recruiting Roundup, powered by Rockin' Refuel.